Process and result-oriented. People are divided between either being process-oriented or result-oriented. This is because we assume one is more important than the other, or one takes a larger responsibility than the other. With this two orientations and a scale in between, people dispute which is the best approach to take, citing the range of benefits of the approach taken. Benefits of both orientations can often be contrasting enough to cause impasses in decision-making. How then can we reap the benefits from both orientations and, more importantly, to gain a better perspective so that an optimal approach can be taken without being ensnared in complexities? The popular sayings frequently heard.
The process is more important than the result because by focusing on the process, the result will naturally come.
The result is more important than the process because that's what matters most. It is what people see and judge. It is what affects the sales, the income, the popularity and whatever. So I don't care how it is going to be done. Just get it done.
The above is what we usually hear, read or communicated to us. Each has good reasons and truths for its own existence. However, each orientation seems to be denying the importance of the other. But we all know that they cannot exist without the other. The process exists because there is an intended result we want, and the result exists because of the processes involved. So having them exist interdependently, and yet having their importance denying the one another, is something we have to ponder. Have we thought deeply about their importance? What are the reasons why the denial of each other importance? And finally, how should we change our perspective of them so as to have the full benefits from both process and result? Let's delve into each orientation. Process-oriented. A person who is process-oriented places great importance on the process of achieving the result rather than the result itself. The common and best reason to why a person believes in the process rather than the result is that, by taking care of the process, the intended result naturally comes. In taking care of the process, it requires having a laser focus and diving deep into each detail of the process. This is usually done so as to bring each detail to a certain level of perfection, leading to a result that is far superior than what was intended and even to all the details combined. So by taking care of the process, it is indeed that the result is certain. However, when taken over seriously or to an extreme, there are three undesirable events that may happen. 1. Frequent delays because of the amount of time spent either perfecting or delving deep into processes. 2. Process creeping. This happens when a process branches out to other new processes because these new processes are thought to better the intended result. The cost of process creeping is the delay of the result. While this may not be entirely a disadvantage, the additional processes more than often makes the entire process a long-drawn one, which may be tiresome. 3. Derailing from the intended result. This happens when a process branches out to other processes, which lead to results that are different compared to the intended one. Again, this may not be a disadvantage as the new result may be better in different ways. But the fact that the intended result has been derailed means that it has never been actualized, and for sure, no one knows which is better at that point in time. Result-oriented. On the other hand, what happens when we are result-oriented? To be only concerned of the result will mean that the processes used do not matter just as long as they produce the result. So right away, we can see the effectiveness in this orientation. It is definitely much faster to see the intended results and the efforts put in can be lesser. This orientation is usually taken because of the need for speed. However, with this need for speed, the choice of processes can be lacking in many ways such as work ethics, moral ethics. With the society heading towards the need for instant gratification, many of these ethics that were once upheld as important are deemed as invalid. Another effect for the need for speed is that the processes themselves are not being examined thoroughly, causing possible unwanted side effects or having to change processes unnecessarily. This actually delays the result from fruition. Result determines process, and process leads to result. After looking at each orientation, which orientation should we take, in order to maximize the benefits while reducing the drawbacks? Process determines the outcome of the result, and the selection of processes is determined by the result. Different types of results require different selection of processes. Hence they affect each other in their respective ways. It is seldom that someone begins a process without knowing what result to achieve, so it is definite that it is through knowing what result to achieve first, that we determine the processes to take, even when most of the time, the intended result is a vague one. Since the intended results are always filled with vagueness, when the selection of process begins, it usually starts off in a general way. As the development continues, processes become more specific. Due to this natural progression, the selection of processes becomes more critical because of the increase in impact to the intended result. As such, now the processes determine how the result will turn out. Hence process determines the result. Knowing the interplay between process and result, then how do we achieve an optimum way to gain most benefits and prevent the drawbacks? Breaking it into smaller steps. One of the optimum ways is to break the intended result into smaller steps, which can be either components or smaller scale of it. This is because at each step, we can determine quickly what best process to take, evaluate whether the process taken is leading towards the intended result and keep pace with the schedule easily. Since at each step, the requirements to meet are much lesser compared to the final intended result, the number of possible processes that can be taken are lesser and more specific. Hence we spend lesser time to determine what best process to take. With multiple steps, it also helps us to evaluate and reflect more frequently, compared to having only one big goal. With more frequent evaluation and reflection, we can prevent feature creeping and project derailment. Evaluation at each step allows changes that add value to the project, instead of causing any negative impact on it. In this way, we are allowing better and better versions of the original intended result. On the other hand, reflection allows us to understand in hindsight, which process works and which does not. Those that work can be continued and honed further, while those that do not, can be immediately discarded. Using this method, we also prevent derailment and unnecessary delays too. This is especially relevant in a situation of dealing with contract or work requirement, where a delay definitely puts us in a bad light and disadvantage. Even if it is for some personal goals, the delay is likely to create and worsen the habit of procrastination. I hope that through this video, we understand the values of process and result orientations, and bringing out the most benefits of these two orientations, by breaking down goals into smaller ones. This helps to clarify why such a method is taken, and how should the method be approached.